Do you collect books like these? Well, don't go away. I'm going to show you what to check before you buy. Books like these are seldom bought to be read. Rather, they are bought to be collected and invested in. Some of them can be very valuable, and any deviation from their original condition will affect their value. So if you're out to buy any of them, then here's some tips on what to check before you hand over your cash. This one is what we in the book trade call fine condition. That is to say, it's indistinguishable from its brand new condition. This book looks almost perfect, but if you look inside, you'll see it's been price clipped. You may have heard that term before. It's when the price has been cut off the jacket flap here. That's often because the book's been given to someone as a gift. Take the jacket off and just check for any other damage or marks. This one we would classify as very good. Some of you may recognise this one. It's got a complete jacket, so it hasn't been price clipped, but it does have a few tiny edge tears just here. And there's some foxing on the page edges. Foxing describes the brown spots that form on certain types of paper due to a chemical reaction, but please don't ask me to explain the science. While you're about it, check to make sure that the jacket is actually genuine. Often first edition books can have a later edition jacket or even a facsimile jacket fitted. So if we pretend for a minute that this copy of 5 on Treasure Island is a first edition of Enid Blyton's very first book, then you wouldn't expect to see references to any other of her later books on the jacket blurb. So check here and here, and if you see any later titles mentioned, then that's a giveaway. So what about inscribed or signed books? Well, in most cases, an author's signature inside a book will make little or no difference to its value. The exception being a rare book signed by a famous author who rarely signs anything. For instance, there are very few signed Just William books, as the author rather disdained them. Consequently, copies signed by her are very rare and costly. A standing joke in the book trade is that unsigned copies of Geoffrey Archer books are more valuable than signed ones, as he signed so many of them. But when a book is signed To Michael from Aunt Maud, which this one actually is, then it's going to slightly devalue the book. An ex-public library book is also a negative factor that will almost always reduce a book's value. It's very easy to check inside and see the lending record. You might also see library ink stamps on some of the other pages too, but be careful as it's not always apparent. This is an ex-library copy, but there's no lending record. But look carefully. This residue could be the remains of a lending record that's been removed. Checking further through the book, that's confirmed by this library sticker, courtesy of Northamptonshire Library Service. So it's clear that ex-library books are often disguised. For that reason, it's important to know what a book should look like in its complete form. Let's go back to this one. Books like this have what are called end papers. These are illustrated ones, but more often they are just plain, like this. It's actually one piece of paper that's glued into the binding and forms part of the book's structure. A library lending record will always be glued to the end paper here. But see this one? It's an ex-library copy, but there's no lending record. That's because the whole page has been cut out. Another trick is to glue the front end paper with its lending record down to the inside cover, so that when you open the book, you don't see the lending record. So knowing that there should always be a blank page here, and you can check at the back too, as it will have the same type of paper that forms the end papers here. If you open the book and it opens directly onto the half title page, then that's a good indication that you've got a disguised library book. Sometimes this page may have been removed in order to keep an inscription. Either way, it will have a detrimental effect on the book's value. Now, if you see a book described in a catalogue as ex libris, then that does not mean it's ex-public library. It just means it was part of a private library collection, usually with a collector's bookplate inside. This can actually add to the value depending on whose library the book came from. Check inside to make sure there's no scribbling to the pages, particularly if they're children's books, and make sure that any full page illustrations, called plates, are all present. This is particularly important because these are glued into the binding, not sewn in with the pages. So often the glue dries out, the plates become loose and they fall out. But if they're just loose, then they can be glued back in, but they must of course be present. In an antiquarian book like this, checking the contents is really important, particularly if the book contains antique maps. There are of course other things to check, like edition. So if you haven't seen my video on how to tell a first edition, then take a look at that too. Do keep posting questions and I'll answer them as soon as I can. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.